forces. The friction force. The friction force is a force that acts between two objects that are in contact with one another. For example, if we are rubbing our hands, they will get wet. So the friction produces heat. The friction force produces heat. The friction force acts on the opposite direction of the motion. So if the motion is acting on the right side or in the right direction, the friction force will act on the opposite direction to the left side. And the friction force here is acting to the right side, so the pushing force or the motion will act to the left side. The friction acts to slow down and stop the motion of any object. And we can represent the force by drawing arrow. So the arrows here are representing two types of forces. The type of motion, the first type is motion, and the second type is the friction. So we can represent the force by drawing arrows. And the two arrows, both of the two arrows of forces here are opposite to each other. The arrow of motion is opposite to the direction of the arrow of the friction force. And now, if we are talking about rough surface, we have two types of surfaces, rough and smooth surfaces. On the rough surfaces, the friction is greater. The friction is very great. So the rough surfaces have very small motion or difficult movement, so the friction here will increase. Which is easier to ride a bicycle, on the floor or the grass? Easy to ride means which one have a great motion. So the floor is easier than the grass. So the smooth surfaces produces less friction and more movement. Which is difficult to ride a bicycle on? Rough surface like sand will produce more friction and less motion. Walking on ice, the ice is a very smooth surface, so less friction and more movement or great motion. On smoother surfaces, friction is less again. We have here a very big difference between a smooth surface, like in picture A, and a rough surface, like in picture B. So picture A, this boy has a very big motion and very small friction force. The friction force here decrease and the motion will increase. But in picture B, the grass is rougher than the ice. So the boy has a very big or increase the motion, increase the friction, sorry, and the motion will decrease. So again, the friction is acting to slow down and stop the motion of anything. And now you have to know that this surface is very smooth, so it's very easy to move on, and the friction here is less than any rough surface. Very smooth surface here, so the friction is less or decrease and the motion increase. Again, you should know that we can represent the force by drawing arrow, and the arrows will be in the opposite direction. So the friction acts in the opposite direction of the motion to slow down and stop the motion. Thank you.